Is it possible that profitability analysis may lead to wrong conclusions? In this video, you will learn what is the difference between traditional and ABC methods of profitability analysis, and how to use the ABC method to make the conclusions more precise. In previous videos, I showed you how to use conventional CVP analysis, in which costs were divided into two categories: fixed and variable. Moreover, we assumed that costs were a linear function of sales volume. This approach is a simplification of reality, which can be sometimes much more complicated. For this reason, while the conventional method is quite simple, it is not very accurate. In fact, it may lead to false conclusions. I'm going to show it with an example in this video. So, is there a more accurate method? Yes, there is. This time we will use a costing method called activity-based costing, in short, ABC. Activity-based costing is more complex than traditional costing, but it can give you a much precise result. The traditional cost system assigns only manufacturing costs to product. This includes direct materials, direct labor, and manufacturing variable overhead. We used to consider them as variable costs.
In fact, manufacturing overhead is partly a fixed cost and partly a variable cost. Remember that. Selling and administrative costs were not assigned to products. For this reason, they were considered as fixed costs. What will change in the ABC method is the manufacturing overhead and costs treated as fixed. But the most important thing from a profitability point of view is that the variable cost of each product will change. This is because normally low volume products often require more activity, such as machine setups and inspections. Assigning overhead using ABC will usually increase the variable cost per unit for low volume products as compared to a traditional overhead allocation. In short, ABC divides costs differently across different products.
Let's see what this change looks like. Imagine a company that produces two types of products: swings and seesaws. The company sells 40,000 swings and 10,000 seesaws annually. The direct materials cost per unit is $60 for the swing and $40 for the seesaw. The direct labor cost is $15 per unit for each product. Each product requires 1 hour of direct labor for completion. Therefore, total annual direct labor hours are 50,000. Expected annual manufacturing overhead costs are $1 million. Thus, the predetermined overhead rate under traditional costing using direct labor hours is $20 per direct labor hour. Since both products require 1 direct labor hour per unit, both products are allocated overhead costs of $20 per unit under traditional costing. Let's now summarize the costs for both products. As you can see, the unit cost under traditional costing is $95 for a swing and $75 for a seesaw. Let's now see what will happen to the unit cost calculated under ABC. I'm going to do this in the following 4 steps. Identify and classify the activities. Allocate overhead to cost pools. Identify the cost drivers. Compute the activity-based overhead rate. Assign overhead costs to each product. Step 1. 3 activity cost pools were identified in our company. Setting up machines, machining, and inspecting. On the screen, you can see 3 cost pools along with the estimated overhead allocated to each cost pool. As I mentioned before, expected annual manufacturing overhead cost is $1 million. Salaries, supplies, and depreciation have been assigned to the machine setup cost pool, which is $200,000. Machining is $600,000 and inspecting $200,000. The sum of the costs in all activity pools is $1 million. Step 2. After costs have been allocated to the activity cost pools, we need to identify the cost drivers for each cost pool. The cost drivers measures the actual consumption of the activity by each product. Our cost drivers and the consumption of the activity cost pools will look like this. Step 3. In the next step, we calculate an activity-based overhead rate per cost driver by dividing the estimated overhead per activity by the number of cost drivers expected to be used per activity. Let's calculate it for each pool. Time for the last step. Now we need to know the expected use of cost drivers for each product. Usually, low-volume products require more setups and inspections. This also happens in our example. Look. As you can see, the number of machine setups, machine hours, and inspections are different for both products. To assign overhead costs to each product, we need to multiply the activity-based overhead rates per cost driver by the number of cost drivers expected to be used per product. In the case of swings, the situation will look like this. The sum of the costs assigned to the swings is $480,000. Now let's calculate how much of this cost will fall on one swing. It's $12. Remember it because we will need it later. Now let's calculate the same for the seesaws. Okay, we already know the costs assigned to both products. In the case of a swing, it is $12. And in the case of the seesaw, it is $52.